Hey folks, this is Jesse Cope, back with another episode of the American Soul Podcast. Hope y'all are doing well, wherever y'all are, whatever part of the day it is for y'all. I sure do appreciate y'all joining me and giving me a little bit of your time. I know how precious a commodity that is these days. We're going to have to forego one of our little walks this time, and I apologize about that. My schedule has just been kind of hectic, hence my appreciation for your time. So, and before I get going, as always though, folks, I just, for those of y'all that continue to share the podcast and to help it to grow week after week and month after month, thank y'all so much. I'm incredibly grateful and humbled by it, and hope that this gives y'all something to think about at least, and helps our country at least a little bit. So thank y'all again. So one of the things I try and do every once in a while on this podcast is kind of, in a way, take a little bit step back from the historical, and this is based on a comment from months ago that I got from one of y'all about every once in a while talking about what those values that founded our country actually are, instead of just illustrating how tied our country is to those values in general. And I've mentioned this often. I'll talk about it again. I've talked about it before. I think one of the fundamental problems we have today is the breakdown of marriage, the confusion, and I don't know what word I'm looking for here, folks, but twisting of the biblical traditional roles of men and women, not just in marriage and family, but in society as a whole, and the dysfunction in the families caused by that. And all you have to do, I've said this, if y'all have been listening to the podcast for very long, you've heard this before. Go walk the halls of a school, wherever you are across the entire country. Doesn't matter if you're in Hawaii or New York, California, Texas, Florida, Kansas, Nebraska, Indiana. It doesn't matter, folks. Wherever you are, go find a school. And if you can't, if for some reason they don't want you randomly walking the halls for a couple weeks, because it wouldn't take you long, find a teacher or an administrator that you trust and ask them what the number one problem in schools today is. And without doubt, if this teacher administrator has a clue of what they're talking about, they're going to tell you marriage and the family. That is the number one issue that our children have today, and you can make a pretty good argument that's outside of our faith and our personal relationship and our national relationship with God and Jesus Christ, that's the number one issue in our nation. And so what I wanted to do today is I wanted to go back and talk just a little bit about that foundational, those biblical principles. And I say this often too, maybe not as often as I should. This one probably is going to step on some toes today, folks, my own included. But if we don't start to make some real fundamental, noticeable, actionable changes in our personal lives, our marriages, and our national life, we won't have this republic for very much longer. We will be the last generation. As Reagan and so many others talked about. So I've read this before, this little excerpt that I'm about to read, but it's been quite a while. And this comes from a source that I use quite often. A huge fan of it. I've talked about it before. I can't recommend it enough. It's the American Patriots Bible. And this is a insert by the editor, Dr. Lee, and it's based on, it's titled Family Values. And it's centered around the quote from Matthew 19, when Jesus is talking about marriage. It says, "For this reason a man shall leave his father and mother and be joined to his wife, and the two shall become one flesh." And right after that, Jesus continues and says, I'm paraphrasing a little bit here, "What God has joined together, let not man separate." Because he's talking in this particular instance about divorce in particular. But here's the little quote by Dr. Lee. "The Bible and marriage. Our American society has been based upon the belief that the biblical view of traditional marriage and family is the backbone of a civilized people. The biblical basis for understanding God's institution or intention for marriage is found in Genesis 2:24. Therefore, a man shall leave his father and mother and be joined to his wife, and they shall become one flesh." The creation of Adam and Eve, male and female, was the foundation of human civilization, and their union was the first marriage. Jesus also reminded us in the New Testament that marriage is an institution of God designed as a lifelong covenant relationship between a man and a woman. Pretty big point here, folks, that I think gets overlooked today, or at least not talked about enough. Marriage is an institute designed and created by God, not by man or government. Therefore, if we're going to talk about this as a nation, this isn't something that they get to decide about in Washington, D.C., or they get to decide about at the Supreme Court. This isn't something that you just randomly change the definition of. It's something that was created by God, and it has to be treated as such. God's command to Adam and Eve was to be fruitful and multiply, fill the earth and subdue it. God's design for procreation demanded the union of a man and a woman. From this sanctified union came children who are born into a secure home with a father and a mother to love, nurture, and teach them how to become healthy, productive, and responsible citizens. God's plan, nature's plan, and common sense's plan all support a man and woman producing children within the institution of marriage. Another pretty huge point here, folks. This one thing we've looked over is the be fruitful and multiply as a country, and you can see that in the decline of the birth rate, the average birth rate. But this, you need a man and a woman. It doesn't matter what you say or what you think. A man cannot have children. That is a uniquely female ability and responsibility. And culture the left has just tried to destroy this at almost every turn. A huge story within the past couple of weeks about this when Netflix decided to release their series called He's Expecting, and actually have lost quite a few subscribers. One of the articles I read said somewhere close to 200,000, which is a little bit encouraging, but it's at least kind of a baby step in the right direction. The point here again, though, is you've got to have a man and a woman. And the only way for us to raise our children correctly is inside a marriage. Whether you're talking about heterosexuality or homosexuality in this case, you cannot raise these children correctly without mom and dad at home. And so I'm going to spend just the last little bit of time here talking about what does that look like? And what are those roles and responsibilities? And I'm going to read a couple Bible verses here just to kind of back up what has always really been the case in the country until recent history, when we've decided all of a sudden that we know better. This is from the New Testament, and it's a section out of Ephesians on marriage. And C.S. Lewis actually, in Mere Christianity, commented on what I'm about to read a couple times. Well, he did explicitly. And he said, I'm afraid, it kind of made me chuckle when I read it. He said, I'm afraid this isn't going to be very popular. And this is not, folks. But just because something's not popular doesn't make it any less true, right? Wives, subject yourselves to your own husbands as to the Lord. For the husband is the head of the wife, as Christ also is head of the church, he himself being the Savior of the body. But as the church is subject to Christ, so wives ought to be to their husbands in everything. Husbands, love your wives just as Christ also loved the church and gave himself up for her, so that he might sanctify her, having cleansed her by the washing of water with the word, that he might present to himself the church in all her glory, having no spot or wrinkle or any such thing, so that she would be holy and blameless. So husbands also ought to love their own wives as their own bodies. He who loves his own wife loves himself, for no one ever hated his own flesh, but nourishes and cherishes it, just as Christ also does the church. I'm sorry, I lost my place there for a second, folks. Because we are parts of his body. For this reason, a man shall leave his father and mother and be joined to his wife, and the two shall become one flesh. This mystery is great, but I'm speaking with reference to Christ and the church. Nevertheless, as for you individually, each husband is to love his own wife the same as himself, and the wife must see to it that she respects her husband. We don't talk about that enough today, folks, inside or outside of the church. But if you're going to have a functional marriage, there is a hierarchy in that marriage, just like there is in society, in the military, in any institution, education, even from pick any secular job. You walk into a doctor's office, there's still a lack of better terminology, folks. I'm going to use some Marine Corps terminology. There's a chain of command. And it, in a marriage, it has to go Jesus Christ, and then the husband, and then the wife. And so what are the roles here? And I'm just scratching the surface, folks. We'll talk about this some more for sure at some point. If you are really interested in this, I would recommend strongly finding a local pastor around you that can kind of talk you through some of the details. But the roles here for men are love your wife as Christ loved the church and laid down his life for her. And that doesn't just mean physically, that means emotionally, spiritually, intimately. Husbands, you have a responsibility to put your wife's needs before your own. Each day, little things, big things, you have a responsibility to lay down what you want and need and put what she wants and needs before that. Husbands, again, says to love your wives as you love your own body, to nourish and cherish her. Husbands, you have a responsibility each day to make sure that you have taken care of your wife. Not at the end of the day, not as a last resort or some afterthought, as your primary responsibility each day before everything else other than God, before your professional career, before the children, before your hobbies, fishing, golfing, hunting, whatever it is, you have a responsibility to put your wife as your second priority. The Marine Corps, they always talked about leadership by example. You cannot expect your wife and after her, your children, to grow up and know God and Jesus Christ and follow their teachings if you aren't doing it first. It's an impossibility, it's hypocritical, it's lazy, and it's cowardly. If you want your family, your marriage first and then your family to be strong and successful, that's the order of things that have to happen. On the wife's side, it's abundantly clear. It's not gray. It's not oh, maybe this is a good idea. It specifically says, submit in all things, not some of them, not the ones you want to, not the ones you can submit to and then none of your friends see it so you can pretend that you're still really running the house. It says, submit to your husband in all things. And it says, respect your husband. That means you don't get to cut him down in front of people. That means you don't get to cut him down in front of your children. That means you don't get to go along with the modern sitcom mentality that men are really just big, dumb gorilla oafs and we just kind of have to put up with them. No, it means that you honor your husband. You talk to them first before you talk to other people about what's going on. You show them respect, you honor them, and at the end of the day, folks, and this is what Lewis was talking about that's so unpopular, you submit, not just like, you don't just give it lip service, you really truly are submissive to your husband. You put him first. You honor him first above all other people, save Jesus Christ. He's more important than your professional achievement. He's more important than your children. He's more important than a weekend with the girls or shopping or Whatever it is, your husband comes first. Second, again, only to God and Jesus Christ. And if we're not doing this, then we have no reason to complain about the state of our marriage. We have no right to be shocked when our marriage is weak and shaky and crumbling and falling apart. So I ran this by a pastor that I trust because I'm not one. I have spent a pretty decent amount in the Bible over the years and in other readings on marriage and other subjects. And I don't say that, I certainly don't mean that arrogantly or to be cocky. It's just kind of a statement to show like where I'm coming from, but I wanted to run past it, and I did. And he actually, based on the marriage counseling that he's done, he wanted me to read through one other, and it's really important, and it's a much bigger topic than we have time left for, or even if I had done the whole podcast on it. And he was pretty strong about it. This is also from the New Testament, and this is on marriage. Now, about what you wrote, it's good for a man not to have sex with a woman. Each man, though, should have his own wife, and each woman should have her own husband because of sexual immorality. The husband should meet his wife's sexual needs, and the wife should do the same for her husband. The wife doesn't have authority over her own body, but the husband does. Likewise, the husband doesn't have authority over his own body, but the wife does. Don't refuse to meet each other's needs unless you both agree for a short period of time to devote yourselves to prayer. Then come back together again so that Satan might not tempt you because of your lack of self-control. I saw a meme years ago and it said, why does the church focus so much on how bad sex outside of marriage is, but they focus so little on how bad no sex inside marriage is? And this pastor who I went to talk about before I did this podcast said the almost number one problem that he's seen in marriages is a lack of following these verses in the Bible. And what that leads to is a number of things that should be pretty apparent to any of y'all that are married. If you're not going to have sex with your spouse, they're going to go looking for it somewhere else. And typically, yes, this is true. Men have the stronger drive, but not always. But if you're not going to meet your spouse's sexual needs, they're going to go looking for it somewhere else because they're human. Now, does that mean that you are responsible for them looking at pornography or committing adultery? No, that's still their choice. But you also have responsibility that you're going to have to bear the consequences for. This doesn't say you meet some of your partners, some of your spouses, your husband or your wife's sexual needs. It doesn't mean you do some things, but not other things, as long as they're not hurtful folks or not immoral. I'm not talking about anything that causes pain or shame or is immoral. I'm talking about things that are perfectly accepted in the bedroom between a husband and wife. If you're not willing to put your spouse first enough to do whatever it is that they want to do in the bedroom with a good attitude, folks, not as a burden, not as a chore, not as again. I mean, really, when you get down to it, how much time each day does that take? 30 minutes would be super generous. Even if you include lingerie and foreplay, it's just 30 minutes probably ain't going to happen. So what you're saying when you don't meet your spouse's sexual needs each day, when you aren't willing to do what they want to do, whatever that is you're saying, you're just not important enough to me. I don't have to be frank, probably 15 or 20 minutes in my day for you. I've got it for TikTok and Netflix and Instagram. I've got it for my girlfriends to talk to on the phone, or I've got it for my sports, my basketball or my football to watch, or I've got it for my kids, but just not you. Yeah, no, you're not that important. And I got to come back to this verse one more time, folks, and then I'll wrap it up for today. Obviously, this could be a much longer and more involved topic. Again, this doesn't say meet some of the needs some of the time. It says meet your spouse's sexual needs. And then it says, and when you don't, it has to be mutually agreed upon in a short period, specifically for the purpose of prayer and focusing on God. A short period, folks. This shouldn't be something that, sex shouldn't be something that we do every once in a while. You want to be able to intimately connect with your spouse emotionally and spiritually each day. Why as a culture do we suddenly think that sex doesn't need to be one of those three pillars in a marriage that you connect on each day in every way? Because we want to do what we want to do. We don't want to do what God wants to do. And that's why our marriages and our families are absolutely crumbling across the nation. I feel like I could say a lot more here, folks, but I feel like I've kept y'all long enough for today. Thank y'all for joining me. Thank you for giving me a little bit of your time. Thank you for your continued support and encouragement, for continuing to share the podcast. God bless y'all. God bless your families. God bless America. I hope y'all have a wonderful rest of whatever is left of your day. And we'll talk to y'all again real soon. I'm looking forward to it. I always do.